In studio with us right now are our buddy Cole Claybourn, High Sox Sunday blog. You can check that out at cardsconclave.com. You can find him on Twitter at HighSock_Sunday. And I reached out to Cole this morning after the story breaks that looks like Matt Adams, first baseman for the Cardinals, is going to require surgery on this quad muscle that he strained in a game earlier this week that's going to knock him out. Now, I've seen Cole, and correct me if I'm wrong, last I saw 3 to 4 months, but I have seen some other things that suggest maybe the rest of the season.
Well, 3 to 4 months probably would knock him out the rest of the season.
I guess if I sat and did the math, it'd be pretty close.
I don't know what his availability would be for the playoffs after that. They probably wouldn't try to rush back into it. The good thing is they have Mark Reynolds, who can play first base and hit, and it's a lot better than last year. Last year if this happened, they would have had Daniel Descalzo playing first base. So to have somebody like Mark Reynolds, that free agent signing really proves to be extremely valuable at this point. It's tough because Adams was really starting to swing the bat well, and that's one of the first things he said after he got hurt. It's unfortunate because I don't know if you guys saw the play, but it didn't look like anything out of the ordinary. He was just rounding first base.
It seems like it never does. It seems like it's the simplest thing, and they just step funny, and then it all goes to hell.
Well, yeah. Wainwright was coming out of the box, and bang. Yeah. So it just, I guess it just shows as tough as the body is, it's pretty fragile, too.
The thing is, the Cardinals have had a rash of injuries already, and it's not even June yet.
Right.
It's odd. A lot of teams, I know a lot of teams have injuries, and especially to key players. I don't really get the sense, and maybe this is where the whole deal with Cardinal fans entitlement comes along, but nobody's really that worried because they know at some point somebody's going to step up, whether it's going to be Mark Reynolds, somebody from the minor leagues. Injuries are going to happen, and some of their guys, like John Jay was hurt. He's rehabbing right now. Jordan Walden is hurt. I'm not sure exactly when he's supposed to be back. I guess in a good way, some of these injuries are happening earlier in the season to where they aren't going to happen. Who knows? There may be something later in the season. We hope not. But you hope that these guys, maybe the optimistic outlook is to think they'll get their rest now. They'll be fresh in the off or during the playoffs because guys like Wainwright last year were tired in the playoffs. Right. So I guess that's really the only way to look at it, and just hope that people start to step up. And last night Reynolds had an RBI, and Jason Hayward finally hit a home run, and hopefully he starts hitting the ball well. So that's really kind of just the mentality. It's really cliche, and it's kind of the old coach speak, but it's the next man up type of mentality.
Well, and that was a point that before you came in, Jimmy and I were talking in the last segment. It does feel, and I made the reference to, it feels like St. Louis is like the New England Patriots of Major League Baseball, because they can lose a guy, they being the Patriots, they can lose 2 or 3 guys, and the next guy steps up, and lo and behold, they're in the Super Bowl again. It's those kind of things. And you mentioned the Wainwright thing, and to your point, too, Wainwright goes down for the year. He's out. He's their ace. Not to say that they've got good pitchers behind him, but they just somehow managed to keep chugging along. Is that a product of the organization and their ability to find talent and know what they've got to call up from the farm system, or how they're scouting free agents, or is some of it just dumb luck?
Well, they've won Organization of the Year 2 years in the past, I think 3 or 4 years. So there is something to be said about the way they draft, and they've had two of their scouting experts. One is Jeff Luna, who's now the GM for the Houston Astros, and obviously you've seen what he's done to rebuild.
They're doing all right.
He's the guy who drafted a lot of their guys that are main guys right now, like Adams, Carpenter, all those guys.
Right.
And then the name is escaping me right now for some reason. It was a guy that just
happens to us all the time.
Got hired by the Oakland A's in the offseason, was their scouting director. So people are noticing how well they scout players, and they honestly they do draft well, they scout well. They've obviously drafted a lot of pitching. The problem now is that a lot of those guys that they've drafted are up in the major leagues, so they're going to have to start at some point restocking their minor league system, because they've even traded some away, in other trades in the last few years. So they do have other players that can step up. It's not necessarily as deep as it has been in the last 2 or 3 years, but the good thing is they've got enough talent at the major league level, I think, right now to compete, provided they don't have any more major injuries.
This Ed Easley that they called back up was in catcher, but obviously is with them talking about him fielding some ground balls. Is that going to be their backup first baseman? Possibly. Is that what is that what the call up was for him?
I don't think that'd be the long-term solution. I think if anybody, they would call Xavier Scruggs up. He's kind of a more seasoned hitter. Easily was hitting really hot down in AAA.
Yeah, it was like 340 or something this month.
To have a guy like that up would be helpful. Who's hitting the ball well. But I mean, I think Xavier Scruggs is just a better player, especially at first base. He's a more seasoned player. I do believe that they'll keep Mark Reynolds there full time, and if they call anybody up, it would be Xavier Scruggs. There's been a lot of talk, and I don't really know that I agree with any of this, but people have suggested Randall Grichuk or Matt Holliday at first base. I would never do that, but maybe Grichuk because he actually apparently, I don't know how accurate this is. According to his Wikipedia page, it was actually scouted as a first baseman when he was drafted in the major leagues. But obviously, he's only played in the outfield, and Matt Holliday's never played first base.
Mm-hmm. It's Fort and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville, 105.3 online, ESPNEvansville.com. Cole Claybourn from High Sox Sunday at CardsConclave.com, our guest in studio. We talk about these injuries and how they manage to plug guys in and they keep chugging along. Is there a guy in your opinion that they just can't afford to lose to injury?
Matt Carpenter.
It's Carpenter for you.
They lost.
Not Molina?
They've lost Yachty before, and I mean they lost him last year for a significant part of the time, and they still made the playoffs.
And there they went. Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, this year he hasn't quite been the same. I mean, that's the easy answer, but quite frankly, Matt Carpenter is, in my opinion, the person who makes that offense go. He's not the best defensive third baseman by any means, but he will put up the best at bat of anybody on the team, and just game in and game out, that he's going to be able to give everything that he's got and be able to get on base somehow, score runs somehow, drive in runs when he needs to. I think. I was a big proponent of him being in the leadoff spot because I just thought he was the best at bat. But it is kind of nice to see him in his position where he can drive in some more runs. So, in my opinion, he would be easily the most irreplaceable person.
The Cubs are I think, still a year away, at least, but playing pretty good. And are the Cardinals? They got to watch who's coming at them in their division. Nobody is right now. They're leading the majors in wins, but are the Cubs, is this the first time for a lot of years that the Cardinals are actually going into June? They're thinking about, hey, got to keep an eye on the Cubbies a little bit.
I mean, I think right now the Cardinals are so worried about their own injuries that they're probably not really worried.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what the standings are because it's May, and I don't usually start to look at them until later in the season. I mean, I know the Cardinals have the most amount of wins. That's all that I really need to know. I honestly couldn't tell you how many games they're up, and I don't really need to know until it gets later. I mean, just because it's not worth fretting over this early in the season because they've been down by several games, they've been up by several games. I mean, the Brewers were up all season and they lost it. So
yeah, they had a 91 season. Yeah,
I think, and I've said this before, even on this show, I think that the rivalry is going to get a whole lot better with the Cubs being good, and I think it's good for baseball when historic teams like the Cubs are good. Because people are interested and they want to watch teams like that, especially when they've got young players like Addison Russell and Chris Bryant that people want to watch. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be, if they end up knocking the Cardinals out of the playoffs or something, I won't be happy. Or winning the division instead of
Gavin
the Cardinals.
will be, though.
Yes.
But,
yes.
I wouldn't say that they're worried, and I don't mean to say that arrogantly. I just, honestly, I mean, they've got so many injuries that they're probably not even worried about anything else right now.
Well, for what it's worth, right now they've got a 5.5 game lead over the Cubs in the division. So when do you start to worry about that? I mean, like you said, middle of you talking about post AllStar break? Is that when you start to pay more attention to it?
Right. And that's not to say I don't. I mean, I watch every game, but
Sure.
I don't concern myself with the standings just yet. I mean, I don't want to scoreboard watch whenever kids aren't even out of school yet. So I would say when it gets closer to the trade deadline, because that's really whenever people are really starting to make decisions based on what the standings are. So that's when you really start to pay. The Cardinals in 2011 were 12.5 games out, toward the end of August, and they had obviously made the trades in July, and then those trades started to help them get to where they were able to win the division on the last day. So it's I'd say around the middle of the summer, middle of July, a little bit post All-Star break is whenever I start to look at it.
Cole Claybourn, our guest, Fort and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville, 105.3 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. You can find Cole's thoughts on the High Sox Sunday blog, CardsConclave.com. Also follow him on Twitter at HighSock_Sunday. One last thing for you before we let you go, because we're about out of time. I assume you say you watch every game, so you watched last night's. You see last night's game? Thoughts on how the final play went down?
Well, I did read that the Diamondbacks players and even their manager thought it was a clean slide. So, I mean, I've never seen a guy break up a throw at home like that.
Right.
I don't think it was dirty. I mean,
I didn't think so either.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know, I think it's fortunate that the catcher wasn't hurt.
Yeah.
Because that was a very, it could have been a scary situation.
Because you're right. I mean, it's usually we see it in a 5-4-3 double play or something. Not at the plate like that. But yeah, I don't think there's anything dirty with it. He could reach the plate with his hand when he slid by.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I honestly, I don't think I've ever seen that sort of a play where they broke up a play that caused an errant throw to first base and then they scored on it. But unfortunately, I'm just so glad they won. I mean, they've been playing, especially after all the injuries and the news they just got. And really, what was the most rewarding thing last night is Hayward has struggled so much. I mean, just it's been tough for him. And then to get that clutch home run in the ninth inning was huge to see that.
Right. Always a pleasure, Cole. I know we got a long season, still plenty of baseball to talk. We'll talk again soon, talk some Cardinals. Thanks for coming by.
All right, thank you, guys.